Hi, boys and girls. This is Miss Cunha. We're going to continue reading our novel for our novel study. We're looking at chapter 16 from A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. We're on page 97 today. We will be listening to the story on Audible, and we will stop every so often and annotate together. Just a reminder, boys and girls, if you are using your own personal book, you may highlight and annotate inside of your book. But if you are borrowing one of my books, make sure that you are annotating on stickies. So if you need to pause this video at any time to get the material that you need or to pause to annotate what we're annotating together, then you may do so. Okay, so let's begin with page 97. We're on chapter 16.
Chapter 16, Southern Sudan, 2009. After the excitement of seeing that first spray of water, the villagers went back to work. Several men gathered in front of Nya's house. They had tools with them, hoes and spades and scythes. Her father went out to meet them. The men walked together to a spot beyond the second big tree and began clearing the land. Nya watched them for a few moments. Her father saw her and waved. She put the plastic can down and ran over to him. "Papa, what are you doing?" "Clearing the land here, getting ready to build." "To build what?" Nya's father smiled. "Can't you guess?"
All right, boys and girls, let's pause here. Can you make a prediction on what you think they are going to build there? So our think bubble, okay, obviously mine is not the best. You could definitely do better than that. Make a prediction. What are they building? So I think they are going to build blank. Fill in your answer. So what do you think they're going to be building? All right, let's continue to see if later on in the next chapters we'll find out if your prediction was correct.
Rochester, New York, 1996 to 2003. Salva had been in Rochester for nearly a month and still had not seen a single dirt road. Unlike southern Sudan, it seemed that here in America every road was paved. At times, the cars whizzed by so fast he was amazed that anyone on foot could cross safely. His new father, Chris, told him that dirt roads did exist out in the countryside, but there were none in Salva's new neighborhood. All the buildings had electricity. There were white people everywhere. Snow fell from the sky for hours at a time and then stayed on the ground for days. Sometimes it would start to melt during the day, but before it all disappeared, more snow would fall. Salva's new mother, Louise, told him it would probably be April, 3 more months before the snow went away completely.
Okay, boys and girls, notice how he's obviously experiencing something that he's never experienced before, right? In Sudan, he never experienced weather going below 70 degrees. And now in the United States, it's snowing, right? It's cold. Notice it says, and we can highlight this, it says that all the buildings had electricity. Remember, he used to live in refugee camps with no electricity. So this is all new to him.
The first several weeks of Salva's new life were so bewildering that he was grateful for his studies. His lessons, especially English, gave him something to concentrate on, a way to block out the confusion for an hour or two at a time. His new family helped too. All of them were kind to him, patiently explaining the millions of things he had to learn. It had taken 4 days for Salva to travel from the Ifo refugee camp to his new home in New York.
Okay, let's highlight that. So remember, from the Ifo refugee camp to New York, It wasn't like he just got on a plane and came directly to New York. It took him 4 days. So he went from airport to airport and then, of course, to New York City.
There were times when he could hardly believe he was still on the same planet.
All right, let's talk about that. Why is it that he can hardly believe that he's in the same planet? Think of what he's experiencing, and I'm going to just circle this paragraph because I think this is important. This goes along with all of the information in these two paragraphs, right? So we can annotate that. He's obviously thinking, or it makes it seem like he's in a different planet because he's not used to what he's seeing in the United States. Electricity, snow, what else? Let's see. So the paved roads, right? I was looking for this up here. So every road was paved. He was amazed that anyone could even cross on foot safely, right? So all of these new things that he's experiencing makes it seem to him like he's on a different planet. Okay, so let's underline some of those different things and let's annotate that. Let's write that down. So we're gonna say Salva feels like he is on a different planet because he is not used to all these things. All right, I'm going to change the color so that you guys are able to see. Oh, what's this? Let's probably change the background. Oh, okay, there you go. Let's make this smaller so you can see. Oops, sorry. All right, let's continue reading. Drag this over here onto the side. Let's continue reading.
Now that Salva was learning more than a few simple words, he found the English language quite confusing, like the letters O-U-G-H, rough, though, fought, through, bow. The same letters were pronounced so many different ways, or how a word had to be changed depending on the sentence. You said chickens when you meant the living birds that walked and squawked and laid eggs, but it was chicken with no S when it was on your plate ready to be eaten. We're having chicken for dinner. That was correct, even if you had cooked 100 chickens. Sometimes he wondered if he would ever be able to speak and read English well. But slowly, with hours of hard work over the months and years, his English improved. Remembering Michael, Salva also joined a volleyball team. It was fun playing volleyball, just as it had been at the camp. Setting and spiking the ball were the same in any language.
All right, so let's take a look at this paragraph. Sometimes he wondered if he would ever be able to speak or read English well, but slowly, with hours of hard work over the months and years. Remember how we mentioned that he was really determined? Now, this is definitely evidence to support that, right? And because his English improved, we can see that because of his hard work and his determination, that's why it improved. So let's annotate that. Let's write that down. I'm going to change the color so you can see it better. Salva continues to show determination.
Salva had been in Rochester for more than 6 years now. He was going to college and had decided to study business. He had a vague idea that he would like to return to Sudan someday to help the people who lived there.
All right, let's stop there. This is pretty important. So he was in Rochester for more than 6 years, right? So he was there for a long time. And notice, and we know this because when we learned about Salva before starting to read this novel, we do know that he did go back to Sudan to help his people. So after he was done with college, he decided that he wanted to go back, right? He just didn't know how or when he would go back. Okay, let's continue on the next page.
Sometimes that seemed like an impossible notion. In his homeland, there was so much war and destruction, poverty, disease, and starvation. So many problems that had not been solved by governments, or rich people, or big aid organizations. What could he possibly do to help? Salva thought about this question a lot, but no answer came to him.
So notice, boys and girls, he was in New York already for 6 years, and still his homeland was the same when he left, right? As of when he left. So there was war, destruction, poverty, disease, and starvation. So many problems that had not been solved by the government. So this is definitely shocking, right? I'm going to put an exclamation mark there. And we also know that in Sudan, nothing has really gotten better because we're also learning from Naya's story that there's also, there's no clean water for the villagers. They're also living in different, not refugee camps, but they're still living in poverty. So nothing has changed, even though it's been years and years later.
One evening at the end of a long day of study, Salva sat down at the family computer and opened his email. He was surprised to see a message from a cousin of his, someone he barely knew. The cousin was working for a relief agency in Zimbabwe. Salva clicked open the message. His eyes read the words, but at first his brain could not comprehend them. United Nations Clinic. Your father. Stomach surgery.
Whoa, your father. Remember that he was going from Sudan to Ethiopia, then from Ethiopia to Kenya, and he had no idea where his father was. So now all of a sudden he gets this message and it involves his father. Let's keep reading to find out.
Salva read the words again and again. Then he jumped to his feet and ran through the house to find Chris and Louise. My father! He shouted. They have found my father! After several exchanges of emails, Salva learned that the cousin had not actually seen or spoken to his father. The clinic where his father was recovering was in a remote part of southern Sudan. There was no telephone or mail service, no way of communicating with the clinic staff. The staff kept lists of all the patients they treated. These lists were submitted to the United Nations aid agencies. Salva's cousin worked for one of the agencies, and he had seen the name of Salva's father on a list. Salva immediately began planning to travel to Sudan. But with the war still raging, it was very difficult to make the arrangements. He had to get permits, fill out dozens of forms, and organize plane flights and car transport in a region where there were no airports or roads. Salva and Chris and Louise as well spent hours on the phone to various agencies and offices. It took not days or weeks, but months before all the plans were in place.
Okay, so let's talk about how Salva is feeling. So as soon as he finds out that his father could possibly be alive, right? Of course, there's no way to get a hold of his father or speak to anyone because remember it says that there was no telephone or mail services there anyway to communicate with the people in the clinic. But as soon as he hears this, he starts planning his trip back to Sudan to see his father. And it's not like he can just get on a plane from one day to the next, right? He has to fill out permits and dozens of forms and paperwork and all that for transportation. And it takes him months before he has the plans in place. Think about how he's feeling. How is he feeling waiting months and months after hearing that his father could possibly be alive, and now he still has to wait months again to go and see him, right? He's definitely feeling overwhelmed, right? Definitely, maybe even, I wouldn't say that he's losing hope, because he is hopeful, right? That he has possibly found his father, but he's anxious to finally go and be able to be with him again.
And there was no way to get a message to the hospital. At times, Salva felt almost frantic at the delays and frustrations. What if my father leaves the hospital without telling anyone where he is going? What if I get there too late? I will never be able to find him again. At last, all the forms were filled out, and all the paperwork was in order. Salva flew in a jet to New York City, another one to Amsterdam, and a third to Kampala in Uganda. In Kampala, it took him 2 days to get through customs and immigration before he could board a smaller plane to go to Juba in southern Sudan. Then he rode in a jeep on dusty dirt roads into the bush. How familiar everything was, and yet how different. The unpaved roads, the scrubby bushes and trees, the huts roofed with sticks bound together. Everything was just as Salva remembered it, as if he had left only yesterday.
So let's talk about this. If you notice, I'm going to underline this paragraph here. So notice after he got to the location that his father might be in, they rode in a jeep on dusty roads into the bush. So remember that he ran into the bush when he was escaping, right, from his family, from the school at the beginning of the book. So it's almost like it's a wrap around the ending type of thing, right? He's going back to where the story started. And then how familiar everything was, and yet how different. The unpaved roads, and so he's describing everything that he sees, right? That still looks the same, but it definitely feels different because it's been so many years. So everything was as Salva remembered it, as if he had only left yesterday.
At the same time, the memories of his life in Sudan were very distant. How could memories feel so close and so far away at the same time? After many hours of jolting and bumping along the roads in the jeep, after nearly a week of exhausting travel, Salva entered the shanty that served as a recovery room at the makeshift hospital. A white woman stood to greet him. "Hello," he said. "I am looking for a patient named Mawian Dut Arik."
All right, let's make a prediction here. My think bubble again is not the best. But let's see do you think that his father is still there? So let's see. I think that blank. Fill in your sentence. So is the father still there? Will he finally be reunited with his father? And give me any predictions that you can think of. So we're going to pause. We're going to stop the video here, and then you can watch the next video for the next chapters.